Alright guys, welcome back to another notes session. Today we're going to be moving on a little bit, but we're still going to keep with factoring. This is section 9.4, and it's called Solving Quadratic Equations by Factoring. Solving quadratic equations by factoring. So we know what factoring is, breaking something up into two sets of parentheses, and quadratic equation is one that is starts with x squared, and then it decreases down. So we have two important properties we're going to talk about today. The first one is called the square root property, and the second one is the zero product property. So let's start with the square root property. Square root property. I'm going to box that, and I'm going to highlight it because it's really important. You guys know what a square root is. Looks like this, right? So if we had like square root of 16, you would know that is 4. Okay, what's the opposite of a square root? Opposite operations. If I said, how do you get from 4 to 16? You would say 4 squared is 16. So something important to note is that 16 square root and squared are opposites or opposite operations. Okay, so for example, here's example 1. If you have one of them and you want to get the other, you just do the opposite. Okay, so say we had x squared is 25. Well, we have an x squared, but we want to go backwards. So what we do is we take the square root. What you do on the left, you have to do on the right. So take the square root of both sides. Okay, that's the opposite of a squared. I told you these two things are opposite, so they will cancel out. That cancels, and that little 2 cancels. So we bring the x down, and we have the square root of 25. Well, what is the square root of 25? It's 5. What does that mean? It means that 5 times 5 is 25. So two positives multiplied together make a positive. What else makes a positive? If you multiply two things together, you'll also get a positive. Two positives and two negatives. So two negative 5s also get you 25. So what we have to do is we have to say it could be two positive 5s, or it could be two negative 5s. So we put a positive and a negative symbol. And this is our answer. Okay, that's a new symbol. It just means two positive 5s or two negative 5s. Let's move on to example 2. What if we had 2x squared equals 22? Let's say we had something like that. So what is the 2 doing to the x squared? It's being multiplied. What's the opposite of that? Division. So divide by 2. Those 2's cancel out, and the x squared comes down. Here we have 22 divided by 2, which is 11. Now we can take our square root. If you have something that's right beside the x squared, you have to get rid of it before you can take the square root. The x has to be alone. So now we can take the square root of both sides. These cancel. The x comes down. And we have square root of 11. Does the square root of 11 simplify? Is 11 a perfect square? No, it is not. So all we do is we just put our positive and negative there, and that's it. This is our final answer. Okay? It does not simplify, so I would just leave it like that if I were you. We have one more example here with this property. It's a little bit harder, but not too bad. Here we have x minus 3 squared equals 64. Okay? Last time the 2 was right next to the x squared, so we were able to get rid of it first before we took the square root. This time, that 3 is trapped inside the parentheses. So we have to do the square root first to get it out of there. So let's do the square root. Cancel the square root and the squared. You bring down x minus 3. On the right, we have the square root of 64. Square root of 64. Well, what is the square root of 64? It is 8, right? So let me rewrite this as 8. Positive, 2 positives, or 2 negatives. Well, let's break it up. Let's break this up. So where you have a positive 8 and where you have a negative 8. So all I did, I broke it up into a positive and a negative. See that? Kind of like absolute value. Remember when we did that? And now we can solve. So first I'm going to go over to the left, add 3, add 3. 8 plus 3 is 11. And then over to the right, add 3, add 3. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. So here we have 2 answers. The x could be 11 and the x could be negative 5. Both of those will work in this equation. You can plug it back in and check, but you don't have to. So those are the 3 types of problems you'll see with a square root property. It's not too bad, right? We're just taking the square root and we're solving. Next we have the zero product property. Zero product property. Remember to box and highlight. What does product mean? It means we're multiplying, right? So say we have, well, how do you get 0? If you're multiplying 2 things together, how do you get 0? Right? You have a 0 times something. 0 times 7 is 0. Here we have x times 0 is 0. Or 21x squared times 0. That's also 0. So how do you get 2 things to multiply together to get 0? Well, at least one of them has to be 0, and that's what the zero product property says. I'll explain it a little bit more here. Let's do an example. Let's say we have x plus 1 times 3x equals 0. The whole goal, what you do for zero product property, is you want to have 2 factors in parentheses that are set equal to 0. And here's what we're going to do with them. We said up here that one of those things, either the 0 or the 7, the x or the 0, has to be 0 in order to get product of 0. I'll explain what that means. So what we do is we'll say this one's blue and this one's green. What we're going to do is we're going to set each one equal to 0. Set this one equal to 0 and set this one equal to 0. And we're going to solve. So let's do the blue first. Box this, subtract 1, x is negative 1. Or over here, divide by 3, x equals 0. So our 2 answers, we have 2 answers again, x is 0 or x is negative 1. You stick those in there, they will work. They will give you 0. Okay, let's go on to something a little bit different. Example 2. Here we have y squared plus 5y minus 24 equals 0. Okay, this is a quadratic equation. So, remember I said the goal. The goal is to have 2 factors in parentheses that equal 0. So how can we get this to look like 2 factors? Well, we gotta factor it. Told you we weren't going to go away from factors. So you have x and x, or I guess y this time because it's a y and y. So let's say two things that multiply to get negative 24 and add to get a positive 5. If this is negative and this is positive, that means the numbers will have opposite signs and the bigger one will be positive. So to get 24, we have 24 and 1, we have 12 and 2, we have 6 and 4, and we have 8 and 3. So like I said, because the 5y is positive, the bigger one will be positive. So these little ones get the negative. Let's see. 24 minus 1. That is 23. So nope. 12. I don't know what I was thinking. 12 minus 2 is 10. So nope. 6 minus 4 is 2. So no. 8 minus 3 is 5. So yes. Okay, here's what we do. We come up here, we say y plus 8, y minus 3 equals 0. And then we do the same thing that we did up here before. So I'm going to make this one blue and this one green. Now that we have them, we achieved our goal. 2 factors in parentheses that equal 0. Set them both equal to 0. Y plus 8 equals 0, and y minus 3 equals 0. Let's try to solve one at a time. Here we subtract 8, 0 minus 8 is negative 8. And over here, we add 3, y equals positive 3. So our two answers are negative 8 and positive 3. These are all the types of problems you're going to see. We did 2 for zero product, and we did 3 examples for square root property. So you guys will have a little bit of work on that. Go ahead and get started tomorrow if you'd like, and if you have any questions, make sure to let me know.